That is why when you look at the World Test Championship, it looks like a shit show. It goes all the way back to gold money from apartheid South Africa. And ever since, we've been making wrong decision after wrong decision. The South Africans were afraid that Australia and England would just kind of go off on their own. So they wanted to join the club. So they formed a club, right? And they actually played a test series, the only test series we've ever had in cricket. And it was essentially the first World Cup, if you're being honest, right? And it was between those three teams. And the South Africans pushed for this ICC, Imperial Cricket Conference. And when they did that, they said, well, let's just keep it to Commonwealth countries. And England were like, oh, that's lovely. Yeah, well, we're that's honoring our legacy. Of course, we'll do that. So the team that misses out at that point, that is a very strong team, is the USA, right? Then, the only teams who come through are New Zealand, West Indies, and India. So West Indies and India had played cricket to a point where I think everyone thought they probably deserve a go. The problem is that South Africa couldn't play the West Indies and India because of apartheid. So we needed another team to come in, Megha, that had to be a white team that South Africa could play. Hello, New Zealand. At that point, what should have actually happened is Argentina should have come in as well. So there's 2 MCC tours of Argentina. I think I'm right in saying that Argentina drew both of them. So they had proved, as much as any other team had, that they were worthy of playing Test cricket. They don't play. And after World War II, when England's no longer a big thing in Argentina anymore, you get to the point where Argentinian cricket just completely dies. Not to mention that Avita might have burnt down a cricket clubhouse at one stage, but that's a different story for a different podcast. You don't hear that sentence every day, do you? But essentially, cricket dies out in Argentina. So we've now lost out on Argentina, what other sports do Argentina love? Is it rugby and football? Are they not also English sports that were brought over?
Yeah.
Right? There's no reason for Argentina not to love cricket. They've had lots of cricket grounds back in before World War II. USA, cricket and baseball share the same ancestry. For up until baseball becomes really big, cricket is arguably one of the biggest sports in America, probably. And it was bigger than baseball, and it got more press coverage than baseball because baseball was seen as a sport of the lower classes, and cricket was seen as a sport of the upper classes. So there were still lots of reports about cricket, even while baseball is growing everywhere in the USA, right? We just turned our back on that because one guy called Abe Bailey from South Africa was like, we can form our own club here. And it completely screwed cricket up forever. And instead of early on going, oh, we've made a mistake here, let's fix this, we just kept doubling down on it and tripling down on it. And so then you have a team like Sri Lanka, who probably gets Test status about 40 years, maybe 60 years after that they should have, because there's no one in their corner. There's no one fighting for them, right? We lose other teams. So Canada almost got Test status when Pakistan did, right? Again, for a very similar reason to why New Zealand got it. Because they needed another white team so that South Africa had someone to play, right? It's incredible. The colonialism, the racism, all this sort of stuff, that is where we are today. And even to the point at which Denmark should probably be a Test playing nation at the moment. Denmark had county cricketers in the 80s and were a really strong side, Megha. But because they weren't part of the Commonwealth, no one pushed for Denmark, right? So we end up in a situation now where cricket hasn't grown the way that it should have. And it's dreadful. If you were looking at what Test cricket is now, and you can include T20 cricket and everything else, it's shambolic because it's never been run by anyone. And it's been either bilateral agreements between old crusty men, or when they did put a rule in place, the rule almost ruined everything, right? And if you want to know, I'll give you 2 facts on how backwards cricket has been, right? In 1973, we had our first ever World Cup.
Yeah, women's, yeah.
Women's, not men. The men had no interest in playing a World Cup. Football World Cup had been going for 40 years, and the men never looked at it. And it took a woman and a rich benefactor as well. Yeah, to get together. Rachel Hayhoe Flint and her friend to get together and make it, right? The second, and here's the other one. This is mind-blowing. In 1996, I think it was, one of the world's biggest websites was Cricinfo. It was absolutely massive at a point where there were no websites in the world. Cricinfo had been around before the internet. right, before WWW, right? That's how big Cricinfo had got. 1996, it's huge. Everyone in the world is trying to follow the World Cup via Cricinfo because it's giving live ball-by-ball updates, right? Which is pioneering in itself. I think Mark Cuban and Cricinfo were the two people who worked all this sort of stuff out. I think Mark Cuban and Cricinfo were the first two groups to actually live broadcast radio online from sporting events. That's how Cricinfo was revolutionary. Mick Jagger funded part of Cricinfo so that he could listen to cricket coverage online when he was touring around the world. This is true. All this is true. This is how big this website was, right? The guys who are running it are amateurs. They don't know what they're doing. You've got a neuroscientist, you've got an engineer, all these different guys, brilliant people, but like they're all in their mid-20s. Even some of them are teenagers. Travis Pasevi was a teenager, right? They're teenagers. They're in their early 20s. They're doing PhDs. They're neuroscientists. They're astrophysics majors and all this sort of stuff. And they've got this thing. They go to the ICC and they go, look, we don't know what we're doing, but we know that this is one of the biggest websites in the world. We want to give it to you for nothing. You just give us enough money to help. We'll keep running it for you, but ICC will own this. And the ICC went, no, we don't want it. 40 million users that website has now. And the ICC has been at war with Cricinfo ever since because Cricinfo completely dwarfs them online ever since. And they were offered it for free. That is the people who run cricket. That is the people who have always run cricket. That is why when you look at the World Test Championship, it looks like a shit show. It goes all the way back to gold money from apartheid South Africa. And ever since, we have been making wrong decision after wrong decision.